So Americans and only American businesses have to pay a 30% upcharge on inputs. How does this link back to leverage? Saying I could put a tariff on China isn't much leverage if the leverage is I could destroy the standing of American business. I could punch my people in the face is not really a great way to get a deal from someone else, particularly someone else who'd be just as happy to punch your people in the face. So let's go back. In reality, what Trump announced on Liberation Day was a bunch of tariffs, and he was telling us how he was going to spend the money. So he wanted tariffs. Over the ensuing 7 days, what happened was everyone called the White House. Markets tanked all around the world. Every business called the White House and said, this is crazy. The formula they used to set the tariffs was revealed as absurd, and the poor penguins on the herd in McDonald Islands were left wondering what they'd done wrong.
I always forget about the penguins.
Well, the White House doesn't, which is important. So what subsequently happened was Trump changed. That was his off-ramp. He wanted tariffs. It exploded. So he said, just kidding. I don't want tariffs. I want bargaining power. So then he says, I get 90 days and I'm going to negotiate with everyone. So as of 48 hours ago, it was definitely the case that he had negotiated 0 deals. The two ones worth talking about were what happened with China. So what happened with China was Trump put special tariffs on China. China retaliated. Trump retaliated, and on they went until tariffs hit 125 and 145% respectively, which is basically an embargo. So they had a meeting about 6 weeks ago in Geneva where they said, this is crazy. And so the outcome of that meeting was a pause on the retaliatory tariffs for 90 days. That's a movie we've seen before. And a framework for future discussions that might lead to future agreements.
That sounds like not a deal to me.
Correct. Then what happened was Trump stopped giving visas to Chinese students, put export controls on American AI chips. The Chinese slow-walked export licenses for rare earth minerals, so they each thought that they weren't getting on. So then they had another meeting, this time in London, and at the end of that meeting, they agreed that the old agreement was still their new agreement. So they agreed to agree that they previously agreed, and what they agreed, they still agreed. So it's still not a deal. The United Kingdom was the other deal. There was a big fanfare in which Trump said, we've got 10% tariffs, put that in 96-point font. So there's no deal in that. What there was in 6-point font, a little asterisk. That little asterisk said, we'll give you a few carve-outs and you'll give us a few carve-outs. But the bottom of page 1 of that agreement said this is not a legally binding deal. Now, yesterday at the G7, Keir Starmer and President Trump claimed that they'd signed a deal. They haven't released the text of the deal. I'll let you decide what that means. But the president did institute an executive order which does say that the Brits can now send 100,000 cars into the United States at a lower tariff rate. And that's literally happening. By the way, which cars do we import from the United Kingdom? Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Jaguars, Aston Martins and Land Rovers. But there is a handout for the middle class, actually the upper middle class Minis, which in fact a very expensive car.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got a little bit of welfare for the Mar-a-Lago parking lot built into that. But we still haven't, so that's the only thing. Steel and aluminium were the key parts of that deal, but the executive order from the White House yesterday said, we're still going to work that out. So you either count that as one deal, 0, or 0.2 of a deal. We're still a long way from 90 in 90 days.
We'll be right back. And if you like the show, please let us know in the comments and tap the subscribe button below to get new episodes. We're back with Prof G Markets. I have predicted on this podcast that because of the tariffs, we are going to see inflation, but it's going to come probably in the fall or by Christmas at the latest. And the reason I've been saying that is because I've been seeing all this stuff from Scott Bessent, who's pointing to these recent CPI reports, specifically the one in April where inflation came down. And he's saying, look, tariffs don't raise prices. And I keep on trying to make the point that they wouldn't have raised prices by now. But that seems to not be something that anyone is really arguing. I mean, it's a very simple point that I feel like needs to be made and clarified if it's true. So I'd like to get your view on this. would you agree with my thesis that inflation is coming because of tariffs, but is going to come sometime in the fall?